When Mara Whitfield first stepped into the Ray's house, she felt the silence before she noticed the dust. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that lingered too long, like someone holding their breath. The living room was neat but untouched, as if no one had relaxed there in years. A framed photograph sat crooked on the mantel, a woman with warm eyes and a soft smile, her arm wrapped around a young girl who looked like she already knew the world could hurt her. "That's Sophia," Daniel said gently, noticing Mara's gaze. "Lena's mom." Mara nodded, offering a respectful smile, though her chest tightened. She had known Sophia was gone. Cancer 5 years earlier. What she hadn't expected was how present she still felt, like an invisible third person standing between them. "And that's Lena," Daniel added. "She's complicated." The front door upstairs slammed. Mara flinched. Daniel sighed. That would be her. 16 years old. Brilliant. Withdrawn. Angry in the way only grief left untreated could make someone angry. Lena Reyes had perfected the art of distance long before Mara ever arrived. Mara didn't try to force a meeting that first day. She unpacked quietly, cooked dinner, let Daniel handle the conversation. Lena never came down. "She'll eat later," Daniel said, though his voice lacked confidence. Mara smiled. "That's okay. I'm not here to replace anyone." She meant it. But intentions, she would soon learn, meant very little inside that house. Lena watched from the top of the stairs as the woman moved through her mother's kitchen. Not touching anything too boldly, not changing anything, just enough to be noticeable. That was always how it started. Her father had brought home 3 women since Sophia died. They all said the same things. They all smiled the same careful smile. They all claimed to understand. And they all disappeared. Lena had learned an important truth early. If you didn't attach, you didn't lose. So she didn't speak to Mara. She didn't greet her, didn't acknowledge her presence, didn't argue. Silence, Lena knew, was far more effective than shouting. Weeks passed. Mara tried gently, leaving notes, asking questions through Daniel, offering rides, complimenting Lena's grades when she saw report cards left carelessly on the counter. Nothing worked. Lena spoke around her, never to her. "She moved my jacket," Lena told Daniel one night at dinner, eyes fixed on her plate. "I didn't realize," Mara began. "She moved it," Lena repeated, louder this time. Daniel frowned. "Mara, please don't touch her things." Mara nodded, apologized, backed off. Lena noticed. Power always revealed itself in moments like that. The first lie was small. A missing homework assignment. Lena claimed she left it on the counter. The teacher insisted it was never submitted. "Maybe it got thrown away," Lena suggested quietly, eyes glossy. "She was cleaning." Mara froze. "I would never." Daniel didn't accuse her outright, but the doubt crept in, like mold, slow, silent. After that, the lies came more easily. A permission slip that never made it to school, a forgotten appointment, a text message conveniently deleted. Each incident alone was insignificant. Together, they painted a picture. Mara felt herself becoming careful in ways she had never been before. She double-checked everything, took photos, left reminders. She told herself it was stress. She was wrong. Lena wasn't just protecting herself. She was rewriting the story. At school, Lena told a different version. "She acts nice, but she hates me," Lena said to friends, to counselors, to anyone who listened. "She wants it to just be her and my dad." The word stepmother carried weight, assumptions, sympathy. Adults listened. When the school counselor called Daniel in for a meeting, Mara wasn't invited. That hurt more than she expected. "We just want to make sure Lena feels safe," the counselor said carefully. "Transitions like this can be hard." Daniel nodded. He looked tired. Mara sat at home that afternoon, staring at the wall, realizing something had shifted. She was no longer a person. She was a problem. By winter, the house felt colder. Daniel stayed late at work. Lena stayed locked in her room. Mara existed in the spaces between, unsure where she belonged. One night, she overheard Lena on the phone. "She thinks she's winning," Lena said softly, laughter threaded with bitterness. "She won't last." Mara stood frozen in the hallway. For the first time, fear replaced confusion. This wasn't grief. This was strategy. The accusation came in early spring. It arrived not as a confrontation, but as a whisper. Daniel sat Mara down at the dining table, hands clasped tightly. "Lena thinks you resent her," he said slowly. "She says you talk badly about her when I'm not around." Mara's mouth went dry. "That's not true." "She's been recording conversations," Daniel continued, eyes avoiding hers. "Some of it sounds harsh." "Out of context," Mara said immediately. "She's manipulating." "Don't," Daniel interrupted. "She's a child." The word landed like a verdict. That night, Mara cried in the guest bathroom, careful not to make noise. She stared at her reflection and barely recognized herself. She had entered this family believing love and patience would be enough. She had underestimated how deeply someone could fear being replaced, and how far they would go to prevent it. Lena lay in bed, phone glowing in her hand, listening to the muffled sound of the shower. She didn't feel guilty. She felt relieved. For the first time since her mother died, the house revolved around her again. And she wasn't done yet. Mara stopped defending herself the night she realized no one was listening. It happened quietly in the kitchen, while Daniel spoke in careful circles about perception and intent. He wasn't accusing her outright, but he wasn't protecting her either. He was balancing, and she was the weight he was willing to let slip if it meant keeping his daughter steady. That was the moment Mara understood something essential. Love did not make people fair. Fear made them cautious. And caution often looked like betrayal. So she changed. She smiled more, spoke less, apologized even when she wasn't wrong. She became gentle to the point of invisibility. Lena noticed immediately. Mara's silence felt like surrender. Lena's senior year arrived like a weapon. College applications, scholarships, counselors hovering. Suddenly, her voice mattered more than ever, and she knew how to use it. She began documenting her version of life at home. Journals filled with selective memories, notes about how Mara withdrew affection, screenshots cropped just enough to imply cruelty, audio clips edited to remove context. She wasn't sloppy, she was precise. And she wasn't doing it for attention. She was doing it for control. Mara, meanwhile, started building something of her own. It began with a single notebook. She didn't label it, didn't dramatize it. She simply wrote dates. March 14, Lena claimed I threw away her application papers. Security camera shows her leaving with them in her backpack. March 22, recorded conversation played for Daniel missing first 5 minutes where Lena provokes. April 3, school counselor called. Accusation, emotional coldness. No examples provided. Mara had spent years working in nonprofit administration. Documentation was survival. She understood systems. She understood that the truth mattered less than how well it was preserved. She installed security cameras in shared spaces, legally, openly. Lena scoffed, "You don't trust me." "I trust clarity," Mara replied calmly. The word irritated Lena more than anger ever could. Daniel began to notice inconsistencies, though he didn't want to. He would hear one story from Lena, another from Mara, and a third from school officials. Nothing lined up cleanly. But doubt was exhausting. It was easier to let the tension live unresolved. So he asked for space. "Just until graduation," he said. "Things are fragile." Mara moved into the guest room without argument. That was Lena's victory. Or so she thought. The turning point came disguised as an opportunity. A prestigious scholarship committee requested a home evaluation. They wanted insight into Lena's environment, stability, support. Lena panicked privately, then adapted. She framed the visit as her final proof. "She's emotionally abusive," Lena told the evaluator, voice trembling just enough. "She isolates me from my father. I don't feel safe expressing myself." The evaluator nodded sympathetically, then asked for examples. Lena provided rehearsed ones. What she didn't know was that Mara had already submitted her own documentation, not accusations, just records, at the request of the committee's background verification process. Neutral, organized, precise. The evaluator left without comment. 2 weeks later, Lena received an email. "We regret to inform you." No explanation, just silence. For the first time, something didn't bend. Lena lashed out. She accused Mara of sabotage, of jealousy, of trying to ruin her future. Daniel demanded answers. Mara handed him the notebook. Then the files. Then the audio, complete, unedited. Daniel listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't defend. When it ended, he sat very still. "I didn't want to see it," he said finally, "because if I saw it, I'd have to admit I failed both of you." Mara said nothing. She had learned restraint was power. The confrontation with Lena happened 3 days later. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no threats. Just facts. When Lena denied them, Mara pressed play. When Lena deflected, Mara showed timestamps. When Lena cried, Mara waited. The silence that followed was devastating. "You recorded me," Lena whispered. "I documented patterns," Mara replied. "There's a difference." Daniel asked Lena to leave for a while, to stay with an aunt. Lena packed in fury. She believed this was temporary. She believed her father would come after her. He didn't. Exile felt different than she expected. No audience, no leverage. Her stories sounded exaggerated, without a villain present to react. Friends grew distant. Counselors became cautious. Colleges asked follow-up questions she couldn't answer cleanly. For the first time, Lena sat alone with herself. And she hated the company. Mara rebuilt quietly. She reclaimed her professional standing, corrected rumors with evidence, not emotion. She spoke to no one about revenge. She didn't need to. The truth was doing the work. One evening, months later, she received an email. From Lena. "Can we talk?" Mara stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Yes, with a mediator. Because revenge, she had learned, wasn't about destruction. It was about refusing to be erased. The mediation room smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, a neutral place designed for emotional detachment. Mara noticed details like that now. Neutrality mattered. It kept things from spiraling into drama, from becoming a story Lena could reshape later. Lena arrived 10 minutes late. She looked older than Mara remembered, not in years, but in posture. Her shoulders were tight, her eyes dull with exhaustion rather than anger. The confidence she once wore like armor had cracked. They sat across from each other, a mediator between them, hands folded neatly. No one spoke at first. Mara let the silence exist. Finally, Lena broke it. "I didn't think you'd agree to this." "I didn't think you were ready," Mara replied calmly. The mediator invited Lena to speak. And for the first time in her life, Lena told a version of the story that didn't paint her as a hero. She talked about her mother's illness, about watching a strong woman disappear slowly, about the terror of loving someone again only to imagine losing them, about how Mara's presence felt like proof that life could move forward without Sophia, and how unbearable that felt. "I didn't hate you," Lena said, voice cracking. "I hated that you survived." Mara felt the words settle in her chest, heavy but clarifying. "I wasn't trying to destroy you," Lena continued. "I was trying to stop myself from disappearing." The mediator looked to Mara. Mara spoke carefully. "I believe you were hurting," she said, "but pain doesn't excuse harm, and you harmed me, repeatedly, intentionally." Lena nodded, tears falling quietly. I know. The moment felt fragile, like glass. Then Mara slid an envelope across the table. Lena stiffened. Inside were legal documents, prepared, finalized, unsigned. Defamation, emotional distress, financial damages. Lena's breath caught. I could have ended this differently, Mara said softly. I had the evidence, I still do. The mediator shifted, uneasy. But I didn't, Mara continued. Because revenge that destroys leaves nothing behind. I wanted something else. She leaned forward slightly. I wanted you to face consequences without being ruined, and I wanted to reclaim my life without becoming someone I couldn't respect. Lena sobbed then, not dramatically, not performatively. Just honestly. I don't expect forgiveness, Lena whispered. You don't need it, Mara replied. You need accountability and growth. Whether that happens is up to you. The meeting ended without hugs, without promises. But something irreversible had happened. The truth had been spoken without distortion. Daniel watched all of this from a distance. He had wanted reconciliation, healing, a neat ending. Instead, he witnessed separation done with dignity. He and Mara divorced later that year. Not in anger. In honesty. They had both failed in different ways, and they had both survived. Mara moved to a smaller house near the coast. She took a leadership role in a nonprofit focusing on family dynamics and trauma-informed accountability. She spoke publicly, not about Lena specifically, but about the danger of unexamined grief and the myth that love alone fixes everything. Her voice carried weight, because she spoke without bitterness. Lena's life took longer to stabilize. She worked retail, attended community college, entered therapy voluntarily, not to prove anything, but because running from herself had become exhausting. Years passed. One afternoon, Mara received a letter. Handwritten. Careful. It didn't ask for forgiveness. It didn't blame anyone. It said, "You were the first adult who didn't disappear when I tried to destroy them. I didn't understand it then. I do now." Mara folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. Revenge had never been about punishment. It had been about survival. About refusing to let lies define her. About choosing truth even when it cost comfort. And in the end, that choice outlived the conflict. Because the most devastating revenge of all is this: to walk away whole, while the truth walks behind you. Forever.